Hola y bienvenidos. My name is Rohit Sawhney, and I'm a group product manager on the cloud security team at Cisco. I'm happy for you to join me here today. Today's topic is self-care for busy professionals, learning to invest in yourself by gaining practical advice that you can use today to train your mind to see the good in every situation. This particular topic is a deeply personal one for me, and I want to take you through this journey of hopefully storytelling and sharing life lessons. Our agenda is as follows. I'll start with mind, body, and spirit, the intersection of all three of those and how that balance is so important. We'll then go into a 5-step process that I found to be very helpful, a framework, let's say. Based on learnings and authors and bloggers that I follow, I'll be sharing stories, and one of those is focused on something called the DOT. I'll leave that as it may, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go about, and we'll close with a call to action. So let's begin. What does it mean to be healthy? Healthy is the intersection of all these three things: body, mind, and spirit. We'll actually begin with mind in a few seconds here. But if you think about this and step back, think about having a good, healthy mind, the fact that you are present, you practice mindfulness, for example, but you may not be healthy from a body standpoint. Maybe you're overweight. Maybe you're breaking down in terms of your body based on how you've treated it in the past. You may have a healthy body, but in your mind, you may not be feeling present or clear. You might have a bunch of thoughts rolling in your head that prevent you from sleeping at night or staying focused. And finally, spirit. You may have two of the three. You might have body and mind, but in terms of spirit, you don't feel like you're doing enough to give back. You don't feel a welcome spirit, one of gratitude, that you're helping maybe humanity. And that may be important to you, or it just may not be present today. I feel that all three of those are very important, and recognizing those imbalances can make a big difference. We often find that the biggest battle is between our heart and our mind, and controlling that is the key to life. I know that in my experiences in life, I've found that I've sometimes been imbalanced. I've also had situations in my life where perhaps I was doing a lot in terms of spirit and feeling good about that, and my body was very active and healthy in terms of what I was eating and how I was taking care of it. But from a mindfulness standpoint, I was conflicted. I felt it in my heart, and things just didn't feel right. I go for a run, and I'm worried. Even after what should be a stress relief, where you're in a better mood. Sometimes we say about workouts, you're only one workout away from a good mood. Well, in that case, I didn't feel it for weeks upon weeks. And in that particular case, I actually had to leave my employer because I was so stressed and not feeling it in my mind. And that's a very short example of what that imbalance can feel like. Now, I'm not a doctor, nor have I actually played one on TV, but I've read a lot about this tiny almond-shaped lobe in your brain called the amygdala that I'm showing in the graphic here. The amygdala is actually responsible for decision-making, for emotion, and for memory. However, it also is important, and why I'm bringing it up is because it focuses on negative information. Have you ever thought about how sometimes our mind focuses on negative information? Someone is not doing well, there's negative news that's out there on TV, or we read about something, and we gravitate towards it. And we don't quite understand why. Well, the amygdala is actually responsible for that. So in my mind, I think, fight the amygdala. Fight this tiny almond-shaped lobe in your brain. It's obviously important for decision-making and memory and emotion, as I mentioned, but it also feasts on negative information, and that's something that we should just be cognizant of. Part of that also translates to what you see here. It's not what happens to us in life that's important, it's the way we react to it. The reality is life happens. As much as we can plan things out, we can be methodical about the way we approach our day, a situation, something we're going to do, things happen. If you have kids, you know this. If you have a spouse or partner, you know this, right? There are things that just happen to us that we have to react to. As soon as we start becoming comfortable, things change. And so it's really our attitude and how we react to those situations, see the good in things, that makes the difference. It's easier said than done, I understand that, but it takes a lot of practice. And if you can just see the positive in situations, say, I'm going to roll with it, things happen, life happens, and maybe this was meant to be, then you'll see things in a slightly different way. And that sometimes makes all the difference. Let's shift a little bit to body. So I went from mind to body. And this is sometimes evident of things that we see at our local gym or where we're exercising, right? I'm the gentleman here that's looking to my left, and I'm saying, I wish I looked like, I look normal like that guy. I bet he's happy. So this is an assumption this individual is making. Now that individual in blue may be thinking slightly differently, right? He may not be thinking about that or even looking to his right to see what that gentleman is glancing at. He may be looking to his other side and thinking, well, I wish I could lose these love handles like that guy. I bet he feels secure, right? Once again, this is an assumption. We always want something better. We always wish we were something else. And if there's any message you take away from our talk here today, it's this. Start with the present. You are where you're supposed to be. Deal with that reality and take a step forward to get better each and every day. We can't resolve the fact that we should be 20 pounds less weight or we should be this point in our career. It might sound nice, and maybe that is the truth, that we should be there based on our trajectory and what we've done, but we're not there, and things happen to us in life. So start with the present, deal with reality, and take a step forward and try to get better each and every day. As such, try not to compare yourself to others. There's really no comparison, as you can see with this quote, between the sun and the moon. They shine when it's their time. When it's your time to shine, you will shine. Sticking with the body, there are a lot of natural things that are out there that we can use. And I love this quote that I saw. I believe it was actually at my local gym, and I found it and ended up being a nursery rhyme that I didn't realize. It states that the best 6 doctors anywhere are as follows: sunshine, water, rest, air, exercise, and diet. All natural things, all things that are available to us in different parts of the world. Hopefully, you have access to clean water, you have access to sunshine. I implore you to get that if you don't. And sometimes we're privileged that we have that. I understand that as well. But these are all natural things that are generally out there without any sort of supplements, drugs, or any enhancements. And so I encourage you to seek those out as much as you can. It really helps the body. What also helps the body is something very natural that we don't always think of. It's this. It's water. And sometimes I find that if I keep water in front of me or have my water bottle that I travel with, I drink it a lot more. I felt I had to drink that since the slide is all about water. But nonetheless, it really helps in all the ways that you see here on this slide. Preventing headaches, metabolism. One of the best things you can do in the morning is have a glass of water by your bedside and drink that. And sometimes people believe it should be slightly warm with some lemon and turmeric, like my mom will tell me. Some people like it just room temperature, some like it really cold, whatever makes sense for you. But it's important to have that, and it really helps with a fresh start, but it also helps with clear skin and having a better mood. And once again, it's typically accessible to us. We don't often drink it enough, but it's very, very important. Another thing that's very important that we sometimes take for granted, and sometimes we have to have technology, funny enough, remind us, is to breathe. I find this fascinating. I do have an Apple Watch, as you can see here, and it reminds me almost every day to be still and to take a deep breath or have a minute of breathing. And typically I'll find myself doing this as I'm putting my kids to bed or after a workout. But just think about that. Technology actually has to remind us to breathe. We're breathing at all times, but we're not always taking deep breaths. One of my latest mantras has been, and I was sharing this with my partner, is when you feel really angry or stressed, take what I said in the previous slide, take a big glass of water and down it, and then take 10 deep breaths. Deep breaths, and do that 10 times. And then see how your mood is slightly different. You've allowed yourself to retrospect and breathe, and maybe that situation that was really stressful to you is not going to be as stressful. Or you've had the time to think about what made you angry, what made you upset, something someone else was doing. And after that glass of water and those deep breaths, perhaps you might feel slightly different. Try that. Let's transition a little bit to eating. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, to be honest, but I found this quote to be very helpful, which is, keep good things in front of you. If you don't want to eat those bad things, like those sweets or those other maybe treats that you have that may be important to you in certain times, maybe comforting, get rid of them. Keep the good food in your fridge, and you'll tend to eat those good things. When you reach for that snack, if you have that drawer at work or perhaps in your backpack, keep good ingredients there in front of you. And there's a ton of them out there. It's important to start to read labels. This is something, honestly, I didn't even think about until my, say, mid-20s or 30s. Taking the back of a, say, granola bar, turning it around and actually reading that label, looking at things like serving size and calorie count. And more importantly, nowadays I'm actually spending time looking at glucose or sugar. There's a ton of things that have a ton of sugar, and we don't always realize that. So take the time to actually educate yourself and learn about that, and keep those good things around you. So when you turn in those times when you really feel hungry or hangry, sometimes they say, that you reach for good things. This particular quote is actually just a picture I took from my local YMCA, where I live in Silicon Valley. And it says, don't go on a diet. Diets are notoriously ineffective and rarely work for the long term. It's one of the strongest predictors of future weight gain. Instead, adopt a healthier lifestyle, incorporating whole foods, more movement, exercise, and nourishing your body instead of depriving it. Now, I will state that a lot of what I'm sharing here is a personal bias that I have. I'm conscious of that, and I know there are a lot of people that do subscribe to diets. In my experience, they don't always work, and I've never been a fan of those. It may be effective for you. However, I also feel, if you step back, that why deprive yourself of things that you do enjoy? Once in a while, it's okay to enjoy that pizza or that craving that you may have. There's something called the cheat day, funny enough, that a lot of people subscribe to. If you're doing healthy things during the week, 6 days a week, take a day and indulge, and that's okay. You want to have that dessert, you want to have that meal, or someone wants to share some treats with you that they made, maybe home-baked items, go ahead and have that. Don't feel guilty. But don't deprive yourself of those things. Naturally focus on having healthy meals the majority of time, moving your body, and typically those healthy lifestyles will become habits over time. This quote essentially says the same thing, but the main takeaway I have from this particular saying is to find things that you love to do. I think that's hugely important. I tell this to people all the time with respect to exercise. I'm a huge fan of exercise. It's what fuels me, and I always take at least 30 to 60 minutes a day to find that time for myself. This will go into the framework we'll talk a little bit about later as well. However, not everyone enjoys going for a run, like I may, or going to the gym. These are things that I practiced over time, and they fuel me because I do things slightly different. But I do try to make it fun. I'm not always doing the same thing day in and day out. However, I encourage you to find things that are fun for you. If you like dancing, dance. If you like walking, walking is one of the best things that we can do, and something you can do till your older ages. Likewise, swimming. But if you like more non-traditional things like gardening, or just going for a long walk on the beach, or something else, some other cardio, let's just say, then go ahead and do that. But make sure it's fun for you. I also translate that to music. Sometimes music can really fuel you and provide you inspiration. I can tell you from personal experience that sometimes putting on that right song at the right time can give you that extra push that will make you go for that extra mile or do that extra set of push-ups or weights. And it's amazing how that can play into our psyche and sometimes even affect our entire day's mood. I tell people sometimes that you should have a theme song, and that can change by the week or sometimes by the day. There's so many great subscription platforms that are out there today. Pick one: Pandora, Spotify. There's other ones in, I think Deezer is one in Germany, if I recall correctly. Whatever it is, subscribe to one, discover music, talk to friends about it, and you might find inspiration in a particular song that you hadn't discovered before. Share that with others, and that will really fuel you, like this beautiful quote states. As we wrap up the section on mind, body, and spirit, I'm going to talk a little bit about now the aspects of spirit in a second, but sometimes our mind is so busy at the end of a given day that we don't spend enough time soothing it and calming ourselves down. And I've often read that people make a concerted effort to wind down at the end of the day. Now, you can do that in many different ways as a ritual. You could start dimming the lights. You could have a glass of water and digest your food after some time. You can read a book, which is, I find, one of the best things to really just wind down and make you sleepy. And so whatever it is that you do, try to calm yourself down. But one of the key things is, don't look at your phone, don't look at technology if you can prevent it. Start to go dark after 10 p.m. or 10:30. Now, I'll admit, I'm guilty of this all the time. Myself and my partner, we have to work sometimes after putting our kids to bed, and it's difficult at the end of the day because you haven't found time during the day to complete all the things you wanted to do. So you have to deal with that reality, but as much as you can, try to wind yourself down, and you'll find that you'll have much better sleep as a result of that. The body benefits from movement, and the mind benefits from stillness. Think about the juxtaposition there, right? We've just talked a lot about moving your body, being active, but the mind just wants deep breathing, wants you to be still. Now I'd like to go a little bit into spirit. And spirit is really about positive thoughts to me. Surrounding yourself with positive thoughts, positive energy, it will restore you and ultimately make your body healthier. Think about stories. Think about people that we know. If people are always complaining and talking about negative things, gossip, let's just say, it doesn't always fuel you. But think about positive stories that you hear in humanity, in people helping each other and good things that they did. That really does provide inspiration, and that typically enlightens yourself and your mood. So try to think about that. I find it fascinating that a lot of these things that we've just discussed in the last few minutes are actually learned at a very young age. When my two daughters were in kindergarten, I would see tons of things around the classroom where I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. We should not hit people. We should play fair. We should share things, and we should give back and have balance in our lives. So if you think about this slide and all the things that we typically learned at a young age, they're very true today, but we often forget them. With respect to that, I think about the spirit and gratitude. And these are some pictures that I'm sharing from my personal experience. I have been fortunate enough to spend time volunteering. And this is something I love to do, and typically has to do with children. As you can see on the top right side here, I spent time in a HIV/AIDS orphanage in India. I spent a greater part of my life just volunteering with an NGO called Freedom Foundation outside Hyderabad, India. And the 20 plus kids that I spent time with there were just fascinating. These kids were anywhere between 2 and 12 years old. They all were HIV positive, and their parents were no longer around because they either passed away or abandoned them. I didn't cure cancer. I'm not a doctor. I just went there every day and spent time with them. I sat with them. I didn't actually even speak the same language. I speak Hindi. They spoke Telugu in Hyderabad. But I played with them. I played cricket, which I enjoy doing, and I learned from them. I spent time at festivals, and we built a library for them, or I fixed computers, whatever I could do. But it was my contribution, and really at the end of the day, it provided me energy and gave me a lot of inspiration to keep me grounded. Likewise, when I came back to the States from that experience, I wanted to make an effect in someone's life. And I met a young boy named William, who is an undocumented immigrant, although he didn't know it at the time. I met him through Big Brothers and Big Sisters. He was 14. He's now 23. And I happened to have the experience of spending time with him. His parents left to go to Mexico one day, and they never came back. They were undocumented, and they could never return back to the States. Shortly thereafter, he found out that he was not born in the States and was no longer a citizen. He was actually born in Mexico, but his parents never told him. So to this date, he continues to remain undocumented, but he is thriving. Through our support and through his own, through just his own accord, he's done a lot of great things to improve life for himself and for his siblings. And so I get a lot of inspiration from him, and we stay in contact very often. This last picture probably begs some explanation as well. You're wondering why I'm in a tutu. One of our friends had triple negative breast cancer, and so I just did a fundraiser for a half marathon that I was running. I said if I can raise over X amount of dollars, I'll go ahead and wear a tutu during the entire race. Now the fact is, I got this tutu from my younger daughter's preschool teacher. It was a size too small. I put it on that morning, and I think I felt I had to go to the bathroom pretty much in my first mile. I never stopped. I just kept going and going because I wanted to make my time, and it was a great experience. But these were just 3 examples of things that I've done that fuel me, give me inspiration, where I was able to give back. And I continue to do that today in many ways through coaching my daughters and spending time with kids. You don't have to do those things. You can choose your own path, but having that positive spirit and surrounding yourself with learning really, I find, gives you inspiration, but also grounds you. Like, we're really lucky to have this platform, all the things that we have around us, and typically most people in the world don't have that. So let's be thankful for all the things we have, and I find that that allows you to really just open up and do greater things in the world. So let's focus on a little framework that I like. It's a 5-step process. It starts with focusing on yourself. Think about an airplane and the oxygen mask. And maybe you've heard this analogy before. Why do we put on the oxygen mask first as opposed to giving it to someone on our side? It's because we need that energy. We need to be running on full versus empty. If we just grind ourselves down day in and day out and we're running on empty, we can't give of ourselves. If we have enough energy and we focus on ourselves, we can give a lot more to others. Step number 2, make time for the things that are important. We are often guilty, myself included, of saying, we're too busy. It's been busy. It was a busy day. We didn't have time for this. Too busy is really a myth if you think about it. People are spending time on something. We all have the same 24 hours. We're spending time doing something. Maybe it's watching a show. Maybe it's on our phone, looking at a social feed. We're spending time doing something, and it's not something else. So I find that people do make time for the things that are really important to them. If you look back in retrospect on your day, look at all the things that you did. You spent time on those, and you didn't spend time on something else. So that's what you prioritized, which will go into our next topic shortly. Something I did want to highlight about making time is a fascinating book called Make Time. This is actually something that in our product organization at Cisco, we read. All the product managers read this, and it comes from Jake and John, who both spent time at Google. And they have this really great framework that you can see an image of here, where they talk about what is my highlight today. If I wake up in the day, or maybe even the day before, which I encourage you to do, take a Post-it, write down what are the great things that you want to do the next day. What is your main highlight? I want to give this talk to all of you so you're aware of self-care. Or I want to really finish that coding project and crank out the code that I want to do to help my teammates. Or I want to spend time with my spouse. Or I want to make a fabulous meal for my family. That's your highlight. Gravitate towards that, laser focus on it, and see the things that give you energy during the day. It's about self-recognition and using that framework. I encourage you to look that up. In terms of prioritization, which I hinted earlier, try this saying, I don't have time, it's not a priority, and see how that feels. Once again, we all have the same 24 hours, but we're choosing to spend it on certain things. So if you can actually say in front of someone, I didn't have time because it wasn't a priority, that would really hit home as to whether that individual that you're speaking to or that thing that you want to do is a priority or not. Set boundaries. One of the authors and bloggers that I follow is a gentleman by the name of James CLEUR. He resides in Columbus, Ohio in the States. And he says, the ultimate productivity hack is saying no. For those of us who work in the product management space, we're notorious for saying no to engineers and other teams. It's actually a mark of a good product manager to say no. Why? Because you can't say yes to everything. If you said yes to everything, you're probably oversubscribed, you can't do it all, and someone is going to be disappointed. Likewise, you have to say no to things in life. You can't go to every event. You can't say yes to every social obligation. And you're just going to tax yourself. You're not going to take out time for yourself. So ultimately, you do have to focus on saying no. And it's a very difficult thing to do. I'm not trying to say it's easy. You have to practice it. And you also have to make sure that other people's feelings are not hurt. If you have family, you have relationships, you can't say no again and again to attending something with your kids or your partner or family members. They're just going to cut you off. They're not going to invite you after a while. So you have to balance that. You have to find the right balance to take out time for yourself, but also say no to certain situations that maybe you already experienced, maybe it's not a learning opportunity, or it's just not a focus right now because it's taking you away from what really energizes you or what your highlight of the day was. Another very important lesson is that little steps matter. Little and often makes much. This once again comes from James CLEUR, where he says, optimize for tomorrow, as in literally the next day. Don't think about a week from now, a month from now, or a year from now. Just save to be a little richer tomorrow, exercise to be a little fitter tomorrow, or read to be a little smarter tomorrow. 1% every day. And so he has this fascinating graph that I'm going to share with you that really extrapolates this out. And for those of us who like science and math, I thought I'd share this with the community. The power of tiny gains. If you just get 1% better every day and focus on that, 0.99 to the 365 power, 1.01 to the 365 power is 38% rounded up better in a year. Think about that. You're 38 times percent better at the end of a year by just making 1% incremental improvements every day versus the opposite of that, as you can see. So that's just focusing on not trying to do too much, just trying to get a little bit better, pushing yourself a little bit more each and every day. Another thing I think about is pushing yourself slightly to the edge. Think about any of us who've attended, say, a sports or recreation class. Maybe you attend one of those boot camps that are so famous, or a biking class, or a friend invites you to some yoga session, but it's an advanced yoga session because they're used to advanced sessions. You go there, you push yourself, and then you find yourself never coming back. Does that sound familiar? We've all somewhat been there, whether it be with exercise or doing something extreme. And so the Goldilocks principle, if you know the story, says it's not too hard, it's not too soft, it's just right. But finding that balance of just right and slightly above that is something that we can really embrace when it comes to our mind and body and spirit, but also as it relates to work. If you can find that right project that pushes you just a little bit, but not too much, you're going to be in that zone where you're really going to be able to push yourself and benefit from that. And so that's something that as a leader, we can give to our teams, but that's something you can also recognize in yourself. Is it too intimidating? Have I been given a project or something I'm embarking on that's just way too much? I'm over my head. Sometimes people will react to that in a negative way, and you might revert. Whereas you can embrace the challenge if you find something that is slightly at the edge of what you know you can do. Another framework I really love is from a book that I've read called Life as Sport from Jonathan Fader. I encourage you to read it, especially if you're like me and you like sports analogies. And he focuses on something called the DOT, D-O-T, doing, outcome, and thinking. we often gravitate towards the outcome, right? We want to be somewhere in the future. We want that VP position, we want to be 20 pounds lighter, etc. But we don't always focus on what we're doing day in and day out, how we visualize those things, our breath, our routine, our process, nor do we focus on how we think about those situations, our self-talk, how we psyching ourselves out, or we motivating ourselves. Jonathan Fader talks about doing things, thinking the right way, their mindset, and not focusing on the outcomes. The outcomes will just follow and naturally over time. You might see the intersection between this framework and what James CLEUR talks about, what I highlighted earlier. Very similar, where they're not focused on the end result, but really on what you do day in and day out and how you improve your situation and how you think about that. So this comes again from a quote that I found. Why focus on process when the world is outcome driven? Don't results matter? Yes, they do matter. You can take shortcuts, you can optimize for the outcome, and you may win one time. But if you optimize for the process that leads to great outcomes, you'll win again and again. Think about that, right? We can all take shortcuts. We can all find ways to get there. And sometimes people take extreme measures to get there. You often find that in sports where athletes will take certain enhancements or drugs to cheat their way to the top. And maybe that will fuel them. Maybe that will give them the next contract. But there's a repercussion for that. They may win then and there, but they're not going to win every time. Their legacy may be tarnished at the end of the day. And I'm sure you know people like that. So if we optimize for the process that leads to great outcomes, we'll do it again and again. We can win and again. We can win again and again, and that really is the right approach. A way to start, and a very simple one, is make your bed. It may sound very trivial and very basic, and you might be thinking to yourself, Rohit, what are you talking about? You put a whole slide up here just about making your bed? Yes, I did. I say it to my kids every day. It's something I do day in and day out, and it's a habit of mine. Before I've even brushed my teeth, I've probably made my bed. Even if I'm late for work, I'll probably stop and make my bed. If somehow the bed is not made in the way I want, just because I'm anal about it, I'll make it again. That's just me, right? But it's still something that you can do as a first thing, and you've accomplished something, right? Just like people have sometimes done a bunch of work before 9 a.m., like gone to the gym, or had time for themselves, had a nice breakfast, read a book. It's some accomplishment that will fuel you and motivate you. And so the simplest thing you can do is make your bed in the morning. Another thing that you can do to retrospect on this that I found is journaling. Now, I actually don't do this, but I found this 5-minute journal concept. I do this in slightly different ways, I'll admit. I do have a lot of thoughts in these journals that I write and keep with me on planes and trains and things of that nature. But if you use this framework of the 5-minute journal, you'll see that it reflects on a lot of the things that we've talked about today. Inspirational quotes that you find. How would I like to make today great? What energizes me and what's my highlight of the day? What are my challenges? What am I grateful for? That intersection of mind, body, and spirit is documented here. And so this is just another tool that you can use in your toolkit to think about this and force it. It also makes a wonderful gift, by the way. So give it to yourself or give it to people that you know and care about. Another very important thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't focus on this, is support. You want to find support for all these things. You need to let people know in your life and in your circles that you're trying to improve your life, that you need to take time for yourself. I just need 30 minutes. I need 60 minutes. My family knows this about myself. If they see me go out for a run or they see me go to the gym, they're like, okay, Rohit needs this time. That's all he asked for. The rest of the time is for the family, so we appreciate that. You need support from the people around you, whoever they may be. And we all have different circles, whether they be at work, ourselves, our own mind and talking to ourselves, our friend circle, or those in our family. There's an intersection or Venn diagram of those, as you can see, but share that. That will also help with accountability at the end of the day. So with that, I'd like to end with a call to action to you. If there's anything that you've gotten out of this talk, and hopefully there's a few nuggets that we've been jotting down, it's about recognizing those imbalances. If you feel off in some way, I'm spending a bunch of time at work, but I'm not spending enough time on myself. I'm not spending enough time with my family, or I'm not spending time in my own thoughts to be creative. Recognizing those imbalances, I have found, is so key. And it takes a ton of time and effort to be able to do that. I'm in my 40s now, and I've discovered that only in this period or in this decade of my life. So don't beat yourself up. It takes time, but just recognizing that imbalance is half the battle. Also, as I mentioned earlier, go with the flow. Sometimes you can't control life. Life happens, things happen. Go with the flow, see the positive in all the situations, but still find ways to make time for yourself. Even if it's 5 minutes in a day, do that. Go in a corner somewhere, do some deep breathing, find a way to just do a 10-minute exercise set. Whatever it is that you need to do, and that will fuel you, but also give you time to retrospect in your own thoughts. Seek support, as I touched on earlier. And finally, and really the most important thing I can say, make it fun. I tell my girls who I coach is you should respect each other, listen to your coaches, give your best self, right? Try your maximum effort, but ultimately, have fun. You're here to have fun. If the sport doesn't feel fun, if this process is not fun, let us know. So find fun in all the things that you do, because ultimately that's what life is about. You want to commit to the process, and that will ultimately determine your progress, as the quote says here. And finally, because I'm a fan of quotes, I'm going to end with this. One of my favorite quotes from Roy Disney, which is, when your values are clear to you, making decisions is easier. It allows you to feel grounded once again and know that this is important to me in life. As a result, I'm going to make this decision. I'm going to say no to this, or I'm going to spend time here because that's important to me. They're part of my core values. And once again, that requires a lot of retrospective time in your own thoughts to recognize that. With that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to thank the Master Series Studio and the crew here in giving me this platform to share this with you. I'd like to thank you for listening. Please take a step forward and look to get slightly better each and every day. We all have an opportunity to do this, and so I encourage you. There's never been a better time than today to start. Thank you.